Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Forster with Karam Fellowship, and this is our latest Member Spotlight interview. Today we have Greg Cochran, who is Director of Applied Theology and a Professor of Theology at California Baptist University. Greg, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
I'm glad you got the memo that people named Greg are the coolest people in Karam
Absolutely.
Fellowship.
Absolutely. Of a certain era, I suppose. But yeah.
Yes, very much so. Let me ask you, what are you trying these days in the classroom that is going well?
Um, well, I would say that one of the things that I've kind of learned and have read about in all the literature, but also put into practice is letting students speak more, just giving them a forum to, I don't know, I suppose it's because of social media or some habits that, they've grown up accustomed to. Just sitting in a lecture is not as natural to them, maybe as it was to my generation. And so I've been testing out over the last year, allowing the students to guide the conversation a little bit and to speak into. So, just open-ended questions. What do you think? And what are you thinking about this? And let them talk and then go back and kind of cover the lecture content, but cover it under the guise of their guiding it. And one of the things that happened, we're coming to the end of our semester here. And so we're just now starting to get some feedback over the semester, and students are starting to share stuff. And one of the things that happened was a student said that she appreciated so much the opportunity to speak and to ask questions. And she had mentioned two particular lectures, but for me, there was one lecture in which I was speaking of, a theology of humanity and then of human sexuality. And we got into marriage a little bit. And I was very surprised at what happened. But for an hour and a half, these students just started asking questions about what a Christian marriage looks like. And there are things that we take for granted because we've been in a mindset for such a long time. At least I have, married 37 years. Um, I didn't think how far they are away from understanding marriage, but from the content of their questions, the depth, and just really even you could pick up on some personal interest stories there. It was very moving for me to see that. So I'll keep incorporating more of that kind of a methodology where let them speak, but understand there's still some content to get across.
We
More
are
than one way to do it.
we are
Yeah.
relational creatures. We're made to learn and grow in relationship with others. And this 19th century pedagogy that focuses
Yeah.
on information transfer is really just declining every year. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. That's
You know,
right.
there have always been lectures in the university since the university was founded 1,000 years ago, but the
Right.
the 40-minute lecture that we are familiar with is relatively recent. It's a new technology, if you will, and
Yeah.
we're free to scrap it for better
Yeah.
technology.
Amen. Amen. And I'm doing some of that. Yeah. That's
Greg,
good.
let me ask you, what's life-giving for you as an educator?
Well, I don't know if I can separate it as an educator and a person. This is a very personal for me, so I'm going to jolt. It'll be a little bit of a jolt here, but I'll come around to the point. This is a real existential question for me right now because I'm in cycle 2 of 6 cycles of 4 different chemotherapies, and I'm looking at a bone marrow transplant at the end of that. So I've had some time to think about this question personally, and honestly, it's exactly what you said. It's the relationships. And so for us, I teach at an undergraduate institution, and some of these students that we get in, they're a long way from being pastor material. However, they're on a track, and there is a future for them, and they will be. And by God's grace, we've been able to see some of them become pastors and husbands and fathers and wives and mothers and servants and church leaders, and so and sometimes even colleagues. So it's really important for me to keep that relational focus. And as I've gone through this bit of a valley, the one thing that I've never regretted is a person who says, "Man, I'm praying for you." I've never said to him, "No, no, no, don't do that." This is good. This is really helpful, and not just that, but I've been able to see like, so I'm keeping my teaching load, but there's some administrative stuff that I just haven't been able to keep up with. But there are people there, and they volunteer, and so for me in the classroom when I can remember this is a future church leader, but it's a person now. And I have a great privilege by God to know them and invest in them. And they're repaying that by just the joy and the delight of learning and growing. And they're taking it in, and it just becomes this synergistic relationship. So, whatever I do, whatever content, and I love the books, but when it meets a person and it's working in a person and the person is showing growth and producing fruit, man, that's why we do what we do, I think.
Amen
So
to that. Christina Bieber Lake said at our Karam Fellowship faculty retreats last year, "You are human beings first and educators second." And
amen.
she meant don't allow your job to take over your life. But we could add, you are human beings as you do the work of educating.
Yes,
Educating is something human beings do with each other. And that you've mentioned both relationships with colleagues and relationships with students.
yes,
And, you know, you emphasize students growing, and sometimes it's the brightest students who learn the most, but sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the students who need the most help sometimes learn the most, and that's just as life-giving, in my
Ab-
experience.
absolutely. And frankly, I've had some of the brightest students learn the least. So
Mm.
it's,
That also is
yeah,
a thing. Yes,
yeah.
can't deny that. Greg, what are three things that are going on in your school, in your field, in your program, somewhere in your vicinity? Three things that you're involved in that you are encouraged about.
Yeah, well, this is actually very much on point for Karam Fellowship. We've invested a lot in, just because that's kind of where I come from, and I'm leading the program. But it's even the School of Christian Ministries wide. We've invested a lot in some of the ideas of, for the life of the world, or thriving, or flourishing, and helping our students have a full orbed view of calling. And that's worked out in a couple of practical ways here. So, one of the ways is we started a program where we're encouraging double majors. And we've made it very easy for students to double major in Christian studies, which would give them, a thorough, basic, foundational view of biblical theological concepts and content. But we can pair that with probably 100 majors now, and we do the course plans for them. So it takes a lot of the problem out of the way for the students. And we do it in such a way that they can stay in school the same amount of time for the same amount of money. There's a lot of work to be done there, but once we set it up, it took off like wildfire, and we found some generous donors to help fund it. The scholarship is only, $3,000, but it was enough to really compel students to jump into this opportunity. And we've grown that now. We have 250 double majors. So these are, business majors, accountants, school teachers, but they're going to be better informed as Christians and live out their faith, not just in a missional way, but in a full orbed way of their life calling. I've actually heard you say that this is, in a way, it's a working out of our justification, right? So that's why it was such a pivotal concept in the Reformation. So we're justified, we're being sanctified in and through our work, in and through our families, and so this is really going well for our school. And likewise, so my program is the applied theology program, and it's really, you can't double major with it because of everything that's required. So it's really full on for vocational ministry. It's at an undergraduate level, it's all the courses of the old school MDiv, the 90 plus hour one with the languages and everything. And so in that, we are also incorporating these concepts to hopefully break down some of the divide between the clergy and the laity. And we don't even use those terms. So we try to build in body life, and our students are really, really enjoying that actually. And it's probably going to be a good thing because so many of them, if the trends are as they say, so many of them may end up being bivocational or co-vocational or something, or church planters. And we actually try to do a lot with church planters and build some of this DNA in early, so that we can have a fuller, thriving congregational life at the end of it. So I'm very encouraged by the way that's working, and the Lord seems to be blessing it.
Very encouraging to hear about those innovative programs. Theological insight drives institutional innovation. And you're definitely singing my song when you talk about justification being the basis of the Christian life.
Yeah,
Essentially, sanctification is justification applied,
right.
practice. Our goal in the Reformation was not to take justification and sanctification and separate them into
Right.
isolated containers. It was to say justification is the basis of sanctification, not
Right.
the other way around. That's what we don't want to mess with.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Amen to that.
Greg, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate your work there.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
I
Because
think you can.
I just think it might help someone out there. Um, if I were to say a third thing, I think I only mentioned two, but if I were to say a third thing that I'm really happy about that's going on here, it's enrollment. And I can say it especially from enrollment in my program. But here's the reason I want to say this. I know that is hard right now. And I know that many people are hurting right now when it comes to the cliff and the competition and the changes, and just so many things are going on to discourage people who are trying to get their enrollment up. And so when I say this from a background of understanding and experience. 3 years ago, I barely got a class, and it was hard work, and it was going through the slog. And when I say got a class, it was a small class. We just barely got it all in before the fall semester. And this was after COVID, and it was, what does this mean? Is this the end? So there was a lot of down vibes from that, frankly. But keep plotting, keep working, keep producing, and keep working to make the program something that people will thrive from being a part of. And we had our highest year last year ever. And well, 2 years ago we had our highest year. Last year we had our highest year ever, and this year is trending ahead of that one. So enrollment, I'm very thankful for, and I know how hard it is. But I would just say it only to say, don't give up. Keep working. You're doing good work, and good things will come.
Amen to that. I think for the last 2 years at least, the Association of Theological Schools has reported that more of our schools are growing than are shrinking. It's
Amazing.
not an enormous difference, and the growth is not, the kind of dramatic growth that has us
Right.
all padding our seat cushions, but it
Yeah.
is growth, and the Lord is at work.
And it's also not the despair that the numbers show,
Right.
strangely, right? With the
Yes.
enrollment clip. So, yeah,
Yes, that's right.
that's a good
Thank you
word.
very much, Greg. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless.